up, everybody? Welcome into the Porch, a Volquest baseball podcast with VFL Luke Lipcius. Every single Thursday right here on Volquest.com and on the Volquest YouTube channel. Appreciate that subscription, share this video, a like, all that stuff really helps us get this out there to more Tennessee baseball fans. Thanks as always for tuning in. It's been really fun, the first couple of ones we've done here with Luke, and as you guys know by now, the pattern is I'll kind of talk here for about 15 to 20 and kind of give you the big stories, what I think are the big stories, some of my big thoughts for Tennessee baseball, where they're at in the season right now, and of course where they have come from. And then we'll get into Luke Lipcius for the last 15 to 20 minutes of the podcast and get his thoughts as well. Really looking forward to that. And could not do this. Could not make this possible, the Porch possible, without our proud sponsors of the Porch, and that is Spivey, King, and Spivey, LLP. Three partners, Matthew A. Spivey, J. Matt King, and Richard A. Spivey. If you got a problem, let them find a solution. TN Trial Lawyers. They do excellent work in criminal defense, family, law, and personal injury with over 80 years of combined experience. If you have a need, check them out, Spivey, King, and Spivey, LLP. Give them a call today for a free consultation, 423-245-4185, or visit them online at SpiveyKingandSpiveyLLP.com. All right, we got a fun show coming up here today. I'm going to kind of break down what I think are the biggest stories from Tennessee over the past week, and I mean, it's going to be hard to kind of disagree with me, right, in terms of it was the Blake Burke week. I mean, Blake Burke was absolutely phenomenal as Tennessee went undefeated last week with a pair of midweeks over Charleston Southern and then a sweep of Gonzaga. And the thing about Gonzaga is you look at that record, and when Tennessee was done with them, they were 1-10, I believe. Not great, right? But it's an experienced lineup that returned nearly everybody. Got a couple of different All-American preseason accolades, including Owen Wild, who was the Friday night starter. And Gonzaga had some starting pitching, but they had no pitching behind it. And that's going to be their downfall this year. If you watched on Friday night, they rode Owen Wild as long as they possibly could, and he got tagged for 5 runs because they didn't go and get him quick enough because they have no arms in the bullpen. And that was the same case on Saturday as well, and then it was really the case for Tennessee as well on Sunday, as Tennessee was able to kind of edge that one out there, had a 4-run lead late in the ball game as Gonzaga was kind of mounting a comeback, but settled for the 17-9 victory when it was all said and done. But Tennessee had the sweep, 11-2 on the season. Did a nice job with the 5-0 week, at back-to-back 5-0 weeks, extending that winning streak to 11 games. But then came Tuesday, and Tennessee had a shortcoming against Boston College. And I'll get into that here in just a moment. But, I mean, Blake Burke was phenomenal. I wrote about it in the 3-2-1. He led the SEC in hits and RBI over the last week. He's leading Tennessee, of course, in average at 420, hits 21, home runs with 7, RBI with 21, total bases with 46, and a slugging percentage of .920. He was 11 for 21 at the plate in 5 games a week ago, had 3 home runs. He drove in 14 runners, which is incredible. He tallied 5 extra base hits, scored 4 runs, walked twice. Against Charleston Southern on Tuesday of last week, he drove in a career-high 5 runs, and I kind of mentioned I was disappointed with myself because the story that night was the return of Tony Vitello and the debut of Maui Ahuna. But we just kind of overglanced, if you will. We just kind of didn't even acknowledge the fact that Blake Burke drove in a career-high 5 RBIs, and he was marvelous. He did go 0 for 4 on Sunday. He snapped an 8-game hitting streak, but he has only failed to record a hit in 3 games this season. He's been really good. He even had a hit on Tuesday night against Boston College as well. So he's been Tennessee's best hitter. He's one of the best hitters in the Southeastern Conference. And I think last week the highlight for Tennessee baseball was, of course, Blake Burke. And then again, it was kind of Kyle Booker, right? I mean, the big question as we head into the final home series before Southeastern Conference play. Tennessee has 4 games left, 3 against Morehead State, and then a midweek before you get into conference play. And you want some of these questions answered, like, who is going to iron out that last outfielder spot? Is Jared Dickey better being the DH and batting 5th in this lineup? Unless you find someone that can solidify that 3rd outfield spot, you really don't have a clue. You really don't know at this point in time, right? And it looked, for the majority of the case on the weekend, that Kyle Booker was kind of right there saying, all right, I'm here. I'm hitting, and I'm ready to roll, right? Maybe, and again, I even wrote this in 3-2-1. Like, I wasn't ready to say he had arrived because it was such a short sample size, but he looked really good over the weekend. And then came Tuesday against Boston College, where he had an 0 for 5 day with 4 strikeouts, and he looked very much like the Kyle Booker we've seen at the beginning of the season. It's unfortunate, too, because kind of you're back to the drawing board, right? Booker entered the week last week hitting a .176 and was in the midst of an 0 for 9 stretch with 3 strikeouts, dating back to his last base hits. He finished the week, let's see here. He singled in the 7th inning of Tuesday's win over Charleston Southern at a pinch hit opportunity. He doubled and scored a run against Gonzaga on Friday. He had 2 hits with a solo home run on Saturday, and then he had 3 hits on Sunday. He really came alive there against the Zags over the weekend, and that kind of gave Tennessee some reassurance because he's got a really good glove. He can play center field or play any of the outfield spots, but in this scenario, he can be out there. His glove is in the outfield. It's a defensive upgrade, and you got a bat that's capable of swinging it in the bottom third of the lineup. But again, like I said, came Tuesday when Booker was 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. So it's kind of like, well, where do you go from here? Dylan Dreiling needs to be getting at bats. And I mean this with no disrespect whatsoever, but Christian Scott continues to get some pinch hit opportunities. And Christian Scott got the start against Boston College on Tuesday. And I remain in the fact that Christian Scott's not going to be a regular starter for this team. So why are we not giving those opportunities to a Dylan Dreiling, who came on and he got a start last weekend, and he was 1 for 1 on Tuesday, looked really good coming on in pinch hit opportunities. He's a young guy. Sure, he's raw, but the talent is there. He hits from the left side. The speed is pretty good. He can play center or left field. I'm just not understanding why he's not getting more playing time right now. Tony Vitello said after Sunday's game against Gonzaga, remember that was the first lineup where we saw Maui Ahuna at the top. We saw Jared Dickey DHing and batting 5th, Dylan Dreiling in the outfield. He said, this is a chance that this lineup we did today might be our best lineup we have. And I agree with him. I truly do agree with him. It's Kyle Booker's in there. He's playing outfield and he's hitting. Dylan Dreiling is in the lineup. He's contributing and playing the outfield. Jared Dickey is batting 5th in the heart of the order and being your DH, which I still think Jared Dickey can play outfield. I think he's improved tremendously. He just needs to finish some plays. I know a lot of you guys were upset with him on Friday night because he allowed a runner to come in, trying to chase down a line drive in the gap, and it hit his glove and it went off, and some runs scored. And I get that. You want to finish that play, but for him to be even in the vicinity to make that play just shows how much improvement that he's made. And you can't charge an error to that play because that was not a routine play. You can't assume the out there. You can't. And that's the difference in kind of the scoring decision. But still, a defensive upgrade with Booker and Dreiling in the outfield, allowing Jared Dickey to go in DH and hit 5th. Man, I mean, what a lineup. It just, Dickey is a hitting machine, right? So you want him to be hitting with guys on base. And that turned out well on Sunday as well when he had that grand slam. So back to Booker. Was having some really good thoughts about him coming out of the weekend, and then you saw Tuesday that effort. That's just not good. So, where do you go from here? I'm intrigued to kind of see, what's going to happen there. So those were kind of my 2 big hitters for the week, Kyle Booker and, of course, Blake Burke, how they kind of, turn those around. Camden Sewell, I have asked about him this week. I think there's a good chance you could see him pitch at some point this weekend. He will be ready to go from what I've been told for SEC play, but I do think there is a good chance you can see Camden Sewell take the mound for the first time in 2023 this weekend at some point against Morehead State. That'll be a good thing, too, because kind of get his legs under him, get an outing out of the way before conference play starts. And I really do think that was kind of the plan all the way around. When I talked to Tony in Arizona, I asked him about Camden Sewell, and he said he's fine. He's just a little sore. If he could absolutely go, he probably could, but I'm going to throw the crap out of him in SEC play. So I'd rather have him ready for SEC play than have him ready for the opening weekend. And that's kind of been the stance the entire time. So I would expect to see some Camden Sewell at least one time this weekend, potentially. If not, I do think that he will be ready to go for Missouri next weekend. All right, one more thing before we get to the Boston College game. Maui Ahuna. All right, Maui Ahuna. A lot of you guys are frustrated with Maui, and I'm talking about my conversation with you guys on the board. You're in the game threads, and and some on the journals quarters and everything. And I understand there's a lot of new fans to the sport of baseball, or at least to college baseball. I mean, I'll be honest with you. 4 years ago, I wasn't paying attention to Tennessee baseball. I just wasn't. I'd go in and I'd call a couple of games for John and Vince, but that was just, 4 or 5 games a season. 2 years ago when they made the run to Omaha, I was very much invested and I was helping out a little bit along the way. And of course, last year I tag team with Ben a little bit and was very much involved. But I mean, this year is my first year on the beat, going to every single game and covering it. So when I say all these things, like I'm talking to myself too, right? But in terms of baseball is different than football. Baseball is different than basketball. One loss is not the end of the world. If you go through an 0 for 10 stretch with 4 strikeouts, it's not the end of the world. You can climb out of it. Sometimes you don't, but that is, you can climb out of it. Maui Ahuna is a Major League Baseball draft prospect. He will be drafted this summer. He has a Major League Baseball glove. He is one of the better defenders in the Southeastern Conference. He hit 400 in Big 12 play last year. He led Kansas in every offensive statistical category. Maui Ahuna is going to be just fine. And it was like he was getting so much criticism because he just continued to go 1 for 4, 1 for 4. His first 3 games, he was 1 for 4. And I understand that's not 2 for 4 or 3 for 4, but it's not like he wasn't doing anything. He was going 1 for 4. He had no for 4 day against Gonzaga on Saturday. And then on Sunday, he was 1 for 4, but he drove in 4 runs, right? So he has 6 RBIs. He has 5 hits, all of them in 1 for 4 efforts at the plate. 1 for 3 on Tuesday night when he drove in a run. Scored a run as well. He's not had a multi-hit day yet in a Tennessee uniform, but I promise you, and I can't stress this enough, Maui Ahuna will be just fine, okay? He is arguably the best player on Tennessee's roster. And yes, that's taking into account Chase Dolander, Chase Burns, Blake Burke, Christian Moore. He's arguably the best baseball player on this roster. Maui Ahuna will be A-okay. And again, this was literally his first full week of action. He was declared eligible on Monday of last week, played 2 games against Charleston Southern, played the weekend series against Gonzaga, and then just played a Tuesday matchup against Boston College, okay? Baseball is a long season. There are, what is it, guys? Is it 55 guaranteed games? Like, just because you go through, and again, Maui, he was still hitting. He was 1 for 4 in these games I'm talking about. But just because you go through a stretch where you don't look great at the plate or comfortable at the plate, you're swinging at bad pitches or you're striking out, it is a long season, and that's just the beautiful thing about baseball, right? So I would not spend much time worrying about Maui. That's just my opinion. That's my 2 cents. I've said it on the board a couple of times, but that's just kind of how I feel. And I think Tennessee's lineup is best when he's at the top playing shortstop, allowing Jared Dickey to slide back and hitting that 5 hole and really driving some runs. One more note on that. Vitello loves lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty. It won't always be that way, and it can't be that way because Tennessee's so left-handed heavy. Vitello loves lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, and he will try to do that as much as he can, just keeping that in perspective. All right, last thing I'm going to talk about here before we get into Blake Burke, the Boston College game. Again, baseball is a long season, all right? You don't play Power 5 opponents for the midweek. You just typically don't. In fact, this was the first home game against a Power 5 opponent since the 2009 season. This was the first midweek Power 5 opponent Tennessee has played since the Hokey Smokey Classic, back in 2013 against Virginia Tech, okay? This was a great chance, a great opportunity, a good test for Tennessee in the midst of a non-conference slate where you're just running through everybody, right? I said that going into the week. I've said that, leaving Arizona, that Tennessee's going to return home and win a lot of games because they're not going to be challenged an awful lot. Boston College, I'll still remain in the fact that I don't think that they're going to be very good in ACC play this year. But still, they return a veteran lineup. They threw their they threw a guy who started the game on Tuesday who has already started 2 Friday night games this season. I don't know if he'll remain being a Friday night starter, but he started 2 Friday night games already this season. They threw out all the stops to beat Tennessee because it was a great opportunity for them to gain some RPI points, and good on them. Tennessee, meanwhile, threw a bullpen game, treated it like a midweek game, as it should. So I'm intrigued to see how that game would have went if Tennessee threw one of the 3, Beam, Burns, Doe, one of those guys. I don't know. Who's to know? But credit Boston College, they took advantage of it. They had the long ball working all night long. But Tennessee lost that game because of self-inflicted wounds. And we've talked about it plenty of times. I've seen thread after thread after thread on the board. Base running blunders. That is nothing new under Tony Vitello, unfortunately. This is something that was, happened last year. This is something that's happened earlier in Tony Vitello's career here at Tennessee. Tennessee is very aggressive on the base pass, but there's got to be a line there between aggressiveness and foolishness, okay? And it's not like they don't prepare and practice this and scrimmage. That's why they scrimmage so much in preseason, right? You know how I said that like a practice is a scrimmage? I mean, that's typically what they do all throughout preseason, in fall camp, or in the fall. They practice first to third with no outs. They practice man on second, 1 out. They practice runner at third, 2 outs. They practice all those, or they wouldn't practice runner at third on 2 outs because on 2 outs you're running with contact. They practice runner at third and 1 out. They practice all these types of things. They talk about it throughout the week. They go back and watch film and they reiterate, what went right, what went wrong, all that type of stuff. So it's not like these guys are not coaching them. I don't know the answer. I don't. It's not a major problem right now, but in games like on Tuesday night, when the margin for error is so thin, that will get you beat. And it did. Griffin Merritt, and again, I'll need to go back and watch the tape to be completely honest with you, but maybe not attempting to go home from seconds on that hit right there. But for real, it was the bunt from CalStar down the first base to the first base side of the pitcher's mound, and Griffin Merritt was in quicksand. He just froze. He didn't go. That was unfortunate. And then, of course, there's the Ethan Payne situation where you had Christian Moore, who homered to tie the game in the bottom of the 9th inning. Blake Burke triples, which, by the way, is looking over his right shoulder to the right field wall, not looking to Elander at third, runs through a stop sign, is called out at third. They go to review and say he's safe. He should not have attempted that three-bagger right there. Staying at 2 with no outs, man, you're in a great situation right there. Like, what are you doing? That was foolish. It worked out for Tennessee's favor, but that was foolish. He gets lifted for a pinch runner. You've got a ground out, and then you've got Jared Dickey coming out and hitting a line drive to one of the 2 outfielders in the outfield at that point in time. Ethan Payne is, as Tony put it after the game, he just never got his feet under him. I saw that. He's kind of, going home, then breaking back to the bag, then trying to tag up, and he had no shot. Poor base running. It's unfortunate. This team, you cannot equate to the 2022 team. This team, you cannot equate to the 2021 team. The power is not as much as those teams. Those teams were special, especially last season. Those teams were special. This team has power, and this team's going to be good, and this team's going to win a lot of games. But they're going to win a lot of games to where it's 6-4, 5-3, 4-1, relying on those arms. You won't have that power just to bail you out all the time. So when the margin for error is thin, you cannot run yourself out of outs in the base pass. You cannot take advantage of those outs or give a run away like Christian Moore trying to call off everybody in shallow right center field on Tuesday night. Griffin Merritt stops in his tracks in right field, and Christian Scott just gives way. That's your ball, center fielder. Go get it. Little things like that will get you beat. I know it's frustrating. It's not the end of the world. You'd rather that happen now than next weekend in SEC play. What does Luc Lipcius think about all of this? Well, we're going to ask him coming up next right here on the porch. But as you guys know, could not make this possible without our friends over at Spivey, King, and Spivey LLP. 3 partners, Matthew A. Spivey, J. Matt King, and Richard A. Spivey. If you got a problem, let them find a solution. TN Trial Lawyers. They specialize in criminal defense, family law, and personal injuries. Examples can be DUI, homicide, assault, sexual offenses in state and federal courts, divorce, custody, alimony, parental rights, or personal injury like car wrecks, accidents, and injuries. They have over 80 years of combined experience. Spivey King and Spivey LLP provides representation throughout the state and federal courts in Northeast Tennessee. The firm has a vast amount of trial experience. Practice has been in place for over 43 years with this partnership since 2012, while also having partners who are energized for today's modern legal demands. Practicing primarily in Northeast Tennessee and in the Tri-Cities and Sullivan County, as well as Hawkins County, Washington County, and surrounding areas, the firm has multiple awards and attorneys who are rated by super lawyers in the Mid-South with real trial experience. Whether you're injured in a car accident, need a divorce, help with custody of your children, or have been accused of a crime, we are here to help. That is Spivey King and Spivey LLP. Find them in person at 142 Cherokee Street in Kingsport, Tennessee. Give them a call today for a free consultation at 423-245-4185. Again, a free consultation at 423-245-4185. If you have a problem, let them find a solution. T&N Trial Lawyers, that is Spivey King and Spivey LLP, and you can always find them online at Spivey King and Spivey LLP.com. We're talking baseball right now. We got Luke Lipcius coming up in here in just a minute, but guys, it is March, right? And so if you want to make some money, head on over to MyBookie. Get started is easy. Visit MyBookie online and use the promo code Volquest to receive a deposit bonus up to $1,000. Grab your extra funds now, and for a limited time, you can claim a free entry into the $150,000 MyBookie Madness Bracket contest for a chance to win some big money. If you're the type of guy who likes to fill out multiple brackets to get an advantage, you can do that too. The price of entry is less than an Uber, all for a shot at life-changing amounts of money. With so many brands to choose from, you need a platform to make it simple to bet and to win, like at MyBookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. All right, Luke, I want to start off this week by asking you the same question, how we started off last week. Blake Burke, guy manning the first base bag the year after you left, is now just unconscious. He was 11 for 21. He had a 5 RBI game last week. He had 9 RBIs in a 2-game span, whatever the case, 3 home runs, all that type of stuff. He is just incredible right now. When you watch him and his at-bats, kind of what are you seeing?
Yeah, it's absolutely unreal. I don't think anyone expects this to happen, I think he leads the nation or is close to it in RBIs. And of course, he's top 5 in home runs. So offensively, it's just crazy what he's doing. And, he steps up to the plate and you expect something to happen. And if I, as a fan, expect something to happen, the pitcher has to feel that too. And so I think with his stature, just his big lefty swing, stepping in the box, it probably intimidates the other pitcher. I know if I was throwing to him, I would be a little bit scared, especially what he does. And then it's like he almost takes a daddy hack every time, but it's a controlled one, which is just nuts. So what he's doing is absolutely unreal. I hope he keeps it up, and I really think he will keep it up, especially as we near closer to SEC play.
Yeah, it's pretty fun to watch. There's no doubt about it. And hopefully, he kind of cooled off. He had a 0 for day on Sunday, and that snapped an 8-game hitting streak. He only had 1 hit, and I think did he drive in a run the other day on Tuesday? I think he did. Yeah, he drove in a run as well. So he's cooling off a little bit, but he's one of the best hitters in the country right now, and it's been fun to watch. While it's fresh on the mind, I do want to talk about Tuesday's game against Boston College. First Power 5 midweek opponent since 2013. First one at home since 2009. I mean, these are not typical of midweeks. And I'm not trying to present Boston College out here to be an Omaha team because I don't think it will be. But it was a really good opponent, a veteran club, a team that threw a weekend starter for a couple innings to get things off. They were pulling out all the stops to try to get that RPI points, as they should, in beating Tennessee, and they did. Tennessee, meanwhile, treated it like a midweek game, a bullpen, throwing 4 or 5 different pitchers and all that, but obviously still trying to win. But you lost. Not the end of the world, but kind of how difficult is it to pick yourself up after losing the way you did on Tuesday night?
Yeah, you go into every game expecting to win, as you should. There's a little bit more to it when you see that it's a Power 5 team. Boston College is a pretty good program, and then they're coming out with their better guys as opposed to, let's just say, the middle to the end of the pack that some teams do on midweeks. They're a very good team. I thought we brought out some of our dogs out the pen too, Zach Joyce, Lindsey, Halverson. So to see us lose the way we did is uncharacteristic. And so, it's one of those things that, should we be scared? Do we need to do something about this? Or, hey, it's just a midweek, a loss is a loss. And I don't think it's too much to worry about, but I do think it's a wake-up call for the guys on the team. What I noticed that, especially this past week, it looks like they're kind of starting to big league stuff. It's almost this I got it attitude. They're not running through home plate. It's a little bit too rah-rah for my liking, and I was part of one of the most rah-rah teams that Tennessee's ever seen. And so it's just one of those things, got to get back to grinding it out. And I think Tony V would completely agree with me in saying that they need to get back to grinding it out. But yeah, it was very odd. Maybe they had a little extra juice, Boston College, that is, because scoring 7 against the people that we brought out there, definitely unexpected. We brought out our dogs, and again, I think this will be a very good experience and a really good kind of warm up to see how we'll compare against those SEC teams. So it's good to get it out of the way, because still these losses are less hurtful than once we get into the SEC season. So overall, I thought we played well. Pitching was good for the most part. They just got a hold a couple. Defense was good. And then I would like to see our bats come around a little bit more.
Now, we haven't seen anybody army crawl and touch home plate with the tip of their finger just yet. So I wouldn't say that the rah-rah is out of control, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. They're not they're not disgracing people.
No, but you're right. You're right. They're trying to figure themselves out and all that. And I do want, when the margin of error is thin, right? Like when you get an SEC play, good ball teams, when you make some mistakes like Tennessee did the other night on the base pass, that can get you beat. It got you beat at Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon's a team that can beat you if you do that. Well, case in point there. And then Tuesday night at the same thing. There was a run where, Christian Moore was calling everybody off, trying to go make that catch in shallow right center field when that was not his ball whatsoever. Christian Scott has got to take ownership and say, get out of my way, that's my ball. That cost Tennessee a run. Griffin Merritt, standing in quicksand there, being froze at third base on a bunt that was towards the first base side of the bag, and with one out, he needed to go home. He did not do that. And then, of course, we have the Ethan Payne situation there when trying to getting caught in between home and third and going back to tagging and then getting hosed. And he was only in that situation because Blake Burke ran through a stop sign trying to go to third base. What are some basic principles, maybe? Let's go Griffin Merritt at third, one out. What are some basic principles as a base runner that you're taught when to go and when to hold? Because that's a play there where Merritt probably, and he would tell you this, Merritt probably should have scored.
Yeah, so those are always tricky. Whenever you're on third and you're trying to read a safety squeeze like he was doing, you're trying to read the ball down and away from the pitcher. And so while the ball did go down and away from the pitcher, and yes, he probably should have scored, the way, I believe it was Cal Stark bunting,
yes,
the way that he went to bunt for it, he put it out, pulled back, and then put it back out. So, they teach us to always be ready, and he definitely should have scored. However, it was kind of one of those funky, maybe in between the pitcher and the first base line to where he couldn't really see it that well. But yeah, they preach so much about base running and how it will win or lose games. And so I'm just going to keep on talking. That Burke thing, he's lucky that he was safe at third, but no outs, you're going to be on second easily. Why are you sending it? Why are you sending it? And that's this trying to be a hero thing. Again, with the SEMO, he's trying to be a hero, make a catch that's probably not his. And so that's a couple things that'll get hopefully squashed by the coaching staff. They've always been really good at squashing that kind of stuff. But yeah, you see, and then Payne tagging, or trying to make it home on that. It's careless mistakes. Again, not as hurtful now. Hopefully we'll learn from it, but only time will tell if we actually do learn from it.
All right, so you are at third base. You're Ethan Payne the other night, and there's one out. They have 5 infielders in. They've got 2 outfielders. Jared Dickey hits it right to the guy in left center field, of course, right? Mm-hmm. How are you reading that? Because Tony Vitello said after the game that he never had his feet under him because he was towards home plate, coming back to tag, and then he never really had a chance. Kind of how are you coached? How are you taught to kind of read that in that situation with one out?
So in that situation, one out, we're going to be on contact at third base. That means as soon as the hitter at home swings, we're crossing over towards home and we're seeing what happens. So that crossover is so that if a ball's hit on the ground, we can score easy, or since the infield's in, we can get into a rundown, then we'll put a runner in scoring position again, make them make a play. So him not having his feet under him is a consequence of a well-executed contact play. And so he went forward. It was a line drive, had to go back and then back forward. I think once he realizes that he's stumbling back and then trying to go back home, to shut it down, shut it down. He was halfway down the line when the cutoff man got the ball. He had no shot. I don't even think he touched home plate. And so in that instance, that's got to be on him, but then also on E to be like, hey, like shut it down. No, don't go. Because again, it turned out to be costly, get another guy up there and see if he can drive you in with 2 outs. But it's just those little things, those little things.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, again, gosh, you just tied the game with CMO's third hit of the night. All 3 hits for Christian Moore on Tuesday, by the way, were run-producing hits. And you had a guy at third with no outs. And, I mean, I know that's baseball sometimes, but, man, it really stings. Something I asked Tony Vitello after the game the other night, how important is this weekend series against Morehead State? Number one, it's the last series before conference play starts. But number two, just to try to bounce back, right? I mean, how important is in that regard? He said that the 21 team, the Omaha team, you guys bounce back so well. So what goes into that? Kind of short-term memory, flip the switch, all that type of stuff. But what goes in to picking yourself up and saying, hey, we got another game out there. We got to go, handle business.
Yeah, it's a culture thing at first. That 2021 team, we did not lose on back-to-back days until Omaha, which I just think is absolutely unreal, that you, after a loss, can shake it off and win. And so that is the, I think, telltale sign of a really, really good team. Now, this team that Tennessee has right now is really, really good, but what's going to separate them is the ability to bounce back. We already saw it earlier in this year, losing 2 straight to start out the season. Maybe it's not there. Maybe it's something that needs to progress as we go through the season. But like you said, this series coming up will be a great way to kind of assess where we're at. If we see people coming out with a chip on their shoulder Friday, playing as hard as they can, and then continuing it through the weekend, good sign. If we see them coming out, more I got this, not doing what they should, still making little mistakes, then the sirens go off. You start getting scared, like, hey, is this going to be a year where we got all this talent but can't do anything with it? So it's up to the coaching staff, it's up to the players to really figure out, hey, do we want to be good or do we want to be great, and just run with that.
So I've been kind of saying about this team, the offense should not be compared to that of you guys last year and you guys in 2021. There's not that type of power in this lineup. There's still pop. There's still guys that can hit for power, but top to bottom, I mean, the bottom third of y'all's order was incredible, right? Mm-hmm. So Tennessee will be winning a lot of games this year, but they'll be winning it 6-2, 5-3, relying on the arms and everything. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment right now? Because I think it's unfair for people to think that this team should be doing what you guys did the last couple of years, because it's new guys. It's a different team, right?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. Those 2 previous teams were definitely not the usual scenario, right? What we have right now is a more usual scenario, and I think people around Knoxville don't realize that. As baseball has become more popular, it's been within the last 2 or 3 years. So that means the fans, that's all they know. All they know is hitting homers, winning by 10. And so when we're not doing that, people start to freak out. And I don't think this would happen, but what could be sensed on the team is like, hey, we're not producing as much as last year's team, as much as 2 years ago. And then they're putting more pressure on themselves, which is the opposite of what you want to do. Again, they are young, so you worry about those kind of things. Now, I do think, like you said, they'll be fine. It's just, are they going to be able to squeak out those 4-3 games? Are they going to be able to squeak out those 2-run wins? Because they're not going to blow the scoreboard out.
All right, looking at Maui's first full week of action, you talk about, the over expectations and freakouts and everything. I mean, Maui's first 3 games at Tennessee, he was 1 for 4. I mean, that's a hit every single game, right? But it was 1 for 4. And sure, he's a free swinger. He'll chase the bad pitches and he'll strike out a ton and everything. But that's just kind of who he is. But he's 1 for 4. He was 1 for 4 on Sunday, drove in 4 runs. He drove in a run the other night as well, part of a 1 for 3 day at the plate and a run scored. He made 1 error in the field. I thought he personally should have been charged with another error. I think that was over the weekend. But anyway, He's a good player, big league glove, all that type of stuff. We know all that. How would you assess Maui's first week in the Tennessee uniform?
Yeah, I don't think it's up to expectation per se, but also dealing with all the stuff he had to coming in, still getting the dirt off, getting loose, getting used to it. I think we'll
And
be
dealing,
fine.
sorry to cut you off, and dealing with some other stuff that no one even really knows. I mean, he's dealing with a lot right now. And those 2 weeks that he was out, there was more than just baseball going on. Continue.
Exactly. And so just having to balance all that, the weight of expectations, all this pressure, and then just playing the game in general, it's a lot. And so I think as we see him settle in, it'll be better. And I think that because he does have that experience, he will end up settling in because he's got a really good swing. He's a stellar defender. He's just got to realize that, hey, I just got to go out and play. Need to take all this pressure off myself, kind of distance myself from what else is going on. But I don't think it's any room to worry. I think he's going to be a great addition to the lineup and a really good addition up the middle.
Put your skipper's hat on right now. Do you like Maui leading off, and do you like Jared Dickey hitting fifth? I like Dickey hitting leadoff as well because he hits. That's all he does. But I also love him hitting fifth because he hits, and there'll be runners on base. I love Tony Vitello said Sunday that with Maui at the top, Dickey DHing and hitting fifth, Dreiling and Booker in the outfield, that has the potential to maybe be Tennessee's best lineup. Kind of how do you see that?
Yeah, I agree. So you want Dickey to be up top because he gets on. But
Yeah.
then you have a guy like Maui who I see him getting on, not as much, a little bit less, but also maybe not driving the ball as much as Dickey does. And so what I would rather see is Dickey where he's at because he's almost acting like that second 3-hole hitter. You got Maui, Simo, Burke, and then you got Denton, Merritt, Dickey, right? So those first three, Burke's going to drive them in. And then you have Denton, Merritt, and Dickey with the chance to drive in the next 3 runs, So I would rather see him just with his hand-eye, with his ability to drive the ball in that 6-hole spot because he'll be able to clean up the runs that, let's say, Denton or Merritt don't. But, I mean, Denton's been an RBI machine. I love watching him play. But then, yeah, that I think we're seeing more of a solidification, at least with Booker in the outfield, with what he did this past week. Dreiling's been looking good too. Other than and then Merritt's in the outfield too. So we'll see if C. Scott gets rotated in or if he's going to stay with that late inning speed kind of guy. I do like C. Scott at the dish. If he gets on, it's not happening as much as you'd think it would.
Yeah, love his speed, love his glove. Normally, again, that was his ball on Tuesday night. That was kind of frustrating, but you'll see, regardless, if he's not in the game, a lot of those tight 4-2, 4-3 games, he'll come in and be a defensive replacement in the outfield. You see that in Major League Baseball all the time as well. Last thing I want to ask you, and you kind of led into that, the way, Kyle Booker swinging the bat. He had a really good weekend. Came on in one of the midweek games, I think it was Tuesday, had a pinch hit single or pinch hit double or something, and he had a double at the end of Friday night's game, had 2 hits and a homer in Saturday's game, had 3 hits in Sunday's game. And so small sample size, and I wrote about it. Like, I'm not ready to say he's arrived, but it's like, okay, I'm here. I'm ready to go. I'm going to make this lineup better. I'm going to make this defensive outfield better. And then there's Tuesday, 0 for 5, 4 strikeouts. It's like, oh, man, kind of like all that progress I just made, it's kind of washed away. What do you see in Kyle Booker? And how can you go from one? I know it's baseball, but how can you go from one extreme to the other in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, it's when he stepped on campus, you could tell there was something special. He's got the tools, he's fast, he has a pretty good arm, and then he has really good hand-eye, so he can hit. As far as him going berserk on the weekend and then struggling on the midweek, that's baseball. I don't think people realize how hard it is to psych yourself out for a midweek game, especially when you got a weekend coming, when you got SEC approaching, and the good teams can do it fairly easily. However, when you're facing Boston College, they're not throwing 85-mile-an-hour flat heaters. They're throwing low to mid 90s, and it's going to be a good off-speed pitch. And so maybe he just thought that he was that they were going to be worse than they were. I don't want to speak for him, but again, it's baseball. Sometimes you have a bad day. Now, what'll be a good tell sign will be how he bounces back on Friday. Does he let it affect him, or does he just keep on grinding forward and have another good weekend? It's nothing to be too worried about, but the game of baseball is tough, and you see times where you're on the top of the world and then you're at the bottom of a ditch. So I wouldn't be too worried.
Great stuff as always, Luke. Appreciate it, man. It's nice when I say things, but when a guy that's been there, done that, been in that dugout, been coached by these coaches says it kind of validates a lot of things. Great stuff as always, man. Look forward to having you back here on the porch next week after Tennessee looks to have another successful weekend series against Morehead State, a midweek, and then, hey, man, it's SEC ball, and we'll talk a little SEC baseball next week, all right?
That's right. I'm excited. Well, I'll see you next week.
All right, that is Luc Lipcius, former Tennessee first baseman, slugger in the heart of that order, home run king as of right now, Luc Lipcius. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the porch. It's every single Thursday right here at Volquest.com, and it is brought to you by Spivey, King, and Spivey LLP. 3 partners, Matthew Spivey, J. Matt King, and Richard A. Spivey, over 80 years of combined experience, and they specialize in criminal defense, family law, and personal injury. Problem, let them find a solution. That's TN Trial Lawyers, Spivey, King, and Spivey LLP. Give them a call today for a free consultation at 423-245-4185. That is 423-245-4185. Guys, appreciate it as always. Tennessee, a 3-game set against Morehead State. Quick note real quick. I will not be covering the Friday night game. Matt Ray's going to pinch hit for me. Really appreciate him. I got some things going on this weekend, or on Friday night. I'll be back on Saturday and Sunday to cover this game. But Matt will have the thread. He'll have the 4 takes. He'll have everything on the front page. Matt Ray will be covering the game on Friday, and I'll be back on Saturday and Sunday. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening to The Porch right here on the Volquest.com.